17, part 2. We are in the Baroque still with Nicolas Poussin. And this is the ashes of Phocion. I'm not exactly sure how the Greek would pronounce that, but this is Phocion's widow here gathering back the ashes because he was a general from the classical era, from the from 4th century BC. He was an Athenian general, and he was unjustly accused of treason. That's from our book, page 394. And so he couldn't be buried within the city grounds. So you kind of see where this fence or gate is. So he had to be burned outside of the city grounds. Of course, that's his remains. He was killed as well. I mean, he was executed and then burned. And so his widow was gathering his ashes. So a lot of people knew that he was being unjustly accused of treason, but no one spoke up. And then when she gathered his ashes, it was considered heroic because she's going to do the funerary rites for him. So this is about honor, and it's about virtue and how that's part of the Roman Stoicism. It's part of their values. So we're hinting towards neoclassicism here, but we're not there yet. That happens a little bit later, but this could be one of those ones that is a precursor toward that. We're still in the Baroque. We do have some depth of field here, which we haven't seen a lot of with our shorter, picture plane and with some of the other paintings. But then we have a landscape, but you see our neoclassical architecture. We're starting to get back into classicism here. Now, Velázquez is a little bit different in the Spanish court. He does Las Meninas, and he is using the light and the drama, and his composition is really unusual here. We do have our dark darks of our Baroque, bright light source, singular light source. I mean, you could argue there's another one over here, but you have this really dramatic light source, light coloration on the infant's, the princess dress here. My mouse is not cooperating. So this is her court. These are her handmaids. And then Velázquez is doing a bit of a self-portrait here. He is painting this painting supposedly right here. So it's kind of an interesting piece. He's mixing things up a bit and including himself in the painting. So he's got a kind of complex space. And she is the infanta. She is the heir apparent, right? And then, let's see what else we want to say about this. So the light is hitting our artist's face as well. So we have our light source, but it's somewhat disordered. And one of the things that's happening here is that he has to prove that he is good enough to be in the court by painting all this intricate detail and so on. But it's almost a bit of a criticism or a hard look at the court and how it's organized. And it's kind of interesting how the king and queen are here in this reflection of the in a mirror. They're not really in the portrait. So he's kind of messing about a little bit about placement and importance. He's turning hierarchical scale on its head. Of course, she is our smallest person. Perhaps her sister or another person over here is smaller, but she's quite small, but she is the most important character in this piece. Her parents here, who are actually on the throne, are in the mirror and quite small. So remember our Dutch Renaissance, they love the mirror. So here we are in Spain, and we're doing kind of a similar thing. Okay, so Rembrandt we're going to get into with the Night Watch, which was thought to be a night painting, and they've changed the title on it. But he did a bunch of individual portraits in this, and this is called genre painting. Genre painting is when you're just everyday life. These are regular people. Now, this is and this isn't. So these people were real people, and he basically collected an extra fee from everybody to get their face put in that looks like them. These are they look like portraits. They really look different enough. So that's one of the things he sort of did because he was a bit low on funds. He was always struggling with money. This is 12 feet high by 17 feet wide, oil on canvas. And we've got our dark darks back here, and we have our light lights. Now this, during World War II, or just after, was cleaned. So this is one of the pieces that was, I think, moved by the Nazis and hidden, because Hitler was all about collecting artworks and not only taking them from Jewish citizens or other people that were going to go into the camps. He also just started gathering up things from museums as well. At any rate, this was recovered and then it was cleaned. And Rembrandt's one of those people that uses a lot of glazing, so it was a little bit hard to tell if he was doing a night scene or if it was heavy glazing. It had been hung somewhere, it had gotten kind of dirty. So once they cleaned it, they realized there's a window here and a light source, and that this gentleman's clothing was kind of tan or peachy colored, and that her gown here, it's almost like an angelic figure here, that she was quite bright and light colored. So there's a window here, it's daylight, it's not a night watch. So now we've changed it to Sortie of Captain Banning, Cox Company of the Civic Guard. It's also to commemorate the Queen of from the Medici family. She's visiting. So there's a bunch going on here. We don't really know exactly what the idea was, but the idea that this is a private militia forming and perhaps something's going on and they need to get out and do something and react. It's an active painting. There's some diagonals. That's another thing I wanted to point out. Diagonals. There's a drum beat here. Dogs barking and moving. They're walking toward, some exit perhaps. He's pointing to the same direction. They're all looking this way. So things are about to happen. They're about to demonstrate or march or, go investigate something. We don't know. Okay, this is another piece. Why did this? Oh, self-portrait with Saskia, 1635. Rembrandt does a number of self-portraits, and again, we have heavy, dark, and light. This one, I feel, is not like the best example. There's another one in the book as well. Do we have our older one? No. Another one in the book I think is a little bit more interesting, but that's his older self, and he is toward the end of his life. Super interesting painter. He does a lot of scenes from life. As you can see, he's here drinking his beer, and there's a lady on his lap, and they're having a meal perhaps and enjoying themselves. Dynamic, things are moving. Nothing too important happening,